Welcome to Legal 123s with ByrdAdatto. Legal issues simplified through real client stories and real-world experiences. Creating simplicity in 3, 2, 1.
Welcome back to another episode of Legal 123s with ByrdAdatto. I'm your host, ByrdAdatto, with my co-host, Michael Byrd.
As a business and healthcare law firm, we meet a lot of interesting people and learn their amazing stories. This season's theme is compliance fundamentals. We will take real client stories, we'll scrub their names to protect confidentiality, and these stories will be built around navigating compliance obstacles in the business of healthcare, Brad.
Very nice, Michael. And before we keep rolling, for those watching us on TV land, you might notice that we look very festive today. That's because, as we're recording it, today is an ugly sweater day, and I think, Michael, you're winning.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say, I didn't have any ugly sweaters, so I just wore one of my normal ones.
Oh, never mind. I feel really bad. Never mind.
Yeah.
Well, since we're getting off ugly sweater talk, let's get back to our theme about compliance. And we'll be talking about compliance a lot this season. But for those that don't know, Michael, what does that mean?
Yeah, it's a broad word. It's used to capture all the state and federal laws that govern the practice of medicine or other regulatory laws that govern healthcare practices.
Mm-hmm.
Healthcare, as you know, is one of the most heavily regulated industries in the United States. And so being in compliance means that you're running your practice in line with these various laws.
Yes, and we often say compliance is not stagnant.
Yeah, there's a misconception that, there's a kind of a list. Check the box, you do this, you do that, you're good to go, and that can get a business in trouble. We talk about compliance drift all the time where, you can at any moment in time be compliant and then take your eye off the ball and you just kind of one, change in process, one change in the practice and the people, and you just kind of veer off course and create risk for your business.
All right, Michael, what opening story do you have for today?
Curious, Brad, have you taken a trip to Japan?
Nope. Furthest west, I guess, I've ever gone is to Hawaii, but I do plan maybe make that journey one day. Why?
Well, I keep bumping into people that are going or have just gone to Japan. It seems like it's the hot new destination, at least for overseas travel. And so it's sparking some curiosity.
Yeah, I've had actually some family members and friends actually were in Japan at the exact same time randomly over the summer.
Yeah. Well, a few of the things that I've heard kind of consistently when I've caught up with people who have gone is, number one, it's beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
It feels like you're in another world, like it's
another country.
Well, no, another world.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you are in another country.
Got
yes.
it. Thanks.
And that it's shockingly clean everywhere. No trash. In fact, one person told me that it's like 5 years in jail or something like that if you drop a cigarette butt on the ground.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean,
no
I don't know if that's true or not. By the way, I haven't looked up laws of Japan
yet. Okay.
But it was just like, I guess it made sense a little bit considering how clean everyone described it,
yes,
including the roads.
Well, and then I heard from some other people how safe they felt while they were there. So I guess going back to that first question, are you planning to go to Japan?
It's a bucket list trip for my daughter Alex, so it's kind of been on our list, and maybe after high school, big trip. I don't know. It feels like a really big trip.
Yes, it does. Sounds like a really big trip. So I guess I hope you guys all love sushi then.
Yeah, it's a problem. I'm not a sushi fan. It's not on the most wanted list like condiments, but I'm not a fan. So that would have to be something I'd have to navigate. But Brad, I did read some articles recently that make me think you not only want to visit, but you might want to move there.
Me? Is it? I'm starting to wonder, like, maybe you want to move there when you heard about the condiments. Like, is mayo against the law there? Well, anyway, why do you suspect that I want to go there? What's there for me in Japan?
Well, let me just pause and make one thing clear. If mayo was against the law there, I'm moving.
Okay.
But back to you.
Okay.
There actually, Brad, there's an entrepreneurial opportunity for you. I read an article that a coveted item in Tokyo in particular is a certain kind of handbag that you could procure and sell for a profit.
Yeah, I definitely think you have me confused with someone else, Michael. A handbag?
Yeah. Apparently, Trader Joe's tote bags that you can buy in their store, they're a couple of dollars, have become a style symbol, and they sell for hundreds of dollars in Tokyo. And just think, there's a Trader Joe's, almost a rock throw from your house. You could just swing by there, pack an extra suitcase, and you'd be off and running.
Yeah, this is certainly interesting, but hardly a reason for me to move to Japan.
Okay, well, hang with me.
All right.
The other thing I learned is that Japan is an aging population, a.k.a. old like you, and have started to adapt to better serve the more senior citizens.
Okay.
I read an article that a Japanese diaper company is actually stopping making baby diapers, and now they're switching to make adult versions. And I thought of you for some reason when I read that. Yeah.
Makes you feel so warm and fuzzy.
So you could take all that money from your Trader Joe totes and have a ready supply of adult diapers when you need them. And as a final thing, they are going to a 4-day work week.
I guess some of that sounds good. Does this Japan talk have to do anything with today's story?
Not really. Indirectly, I guess we'll go with that. Indirectly. Okay. The topic of our story today will make both of us feel old. It is a classic story of the modern world confronting old laws written many years ago.
Okay, well, it's kind of like what we deal with the aesthetic world. It seems like there are laws in the books that are super old, and the aesthetic world's advancing so fast with new technologies and new treatments. And so sometimes the law and the books don't even keep up with what's actually happening in that real world.
Yeah, and so we're going to be venturing into the world of psychiatry today, Brad. And we have a unique story, and this is actually not one of our real client stories. This is a real story in the news that was shared with us by one of our clients. It's a fascinating and causes many questions on the physician-patient relationship. So first, shout out to Tina for sharing the story with me.
So, real story on real people from a real client, but not our client. Okay, got it. Let's get in the story.
Yeah, not a real client.
No.
Real story
about real people
given to us from a client.
Us, from a client, but not our client in this story.
Yeah. Okay, so the story today follows, for those curious, a New York Times article that was published on August 8th of 2024 called "The Gamer and the Psychiatrist." And so, Brad, I know in a past life you considered yourself a gamer, or at least a quasi-gamer.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how far you want to go back, but I used to dominate the Pong game when I was about 5. Then I moved over to Atari Breakout. Didn't jump into college when I started playing Madden football. And then at one point I was introduced to the first-person shooter game called Doom. I don't know if I ever really was very good at it, though.
Yeah. I wasn't much of a gamer, but my college years, of course, when you have too much time on your hands, I did become a master of Joe Montana football and techno baseball. But one of the main characters in the story today is a psychiatrist who is referred to in this article as Dr. K.
Okay, so this is based on this real story, and the title of the article you read leads me to believe that Dr. K was treating a gamer?
Well, you're using context clues well. However, Brad, you're making a dangerous assumption because your statement actually is the fascinating dilemma of this entire article. And so, you know what they say, if you assume, you make an ass out of you and me. And I think you're doing that here, as we'll find out.
Stepped in that one. No more assumptions for me, Mr. Michael.
Okay. So here's the backstory on Dr. K.
Okay.
He was a gamer during his younger years. In fact, he was pretty obsessive, and it got so bad kind of in his late teens that he nearly flunked out of college. Dr. K's life changed in his 20s when he went to India for 3 months studying meditation and yoga.
Okay. Did he break this gaming addiction that he had?
He did, yeah. He came back to the United States. He went to medical school, and even completed his residency at Harvard.
Wow, that sounds like some really good mediation and yoga.
Yes. Dr. K was interested in learning, and when he was doing his psychiatry training, he was interested in learning about video game addiction.
Okay.
And he was disappointed to find that there was little in the psychiatry world about this type of addiction. In fact, they really didn't know much at all about the gaming world.
Yeah, with all these different types of addiction and addictive personalities, that is shocking that it was not noticed. And without making any assumptions here,
You're still an ass.
Seems intuitive that the gaming is a problem for a lot of teens and young adults.
Yes, yeah, I agree. Well, so Dr. K got out and he decided to bring a modern approach to psychiatry. He launched a business called Healthy Gamer and decided to stream to get his Healthy Gamer content out there. And he used Twitch as his medium to launch his business.
Well, I think we have maybe a vocabulary word for some people. For those not familiar, Twitch is a live streaming service that focuses on video games and esports competitions. It also offers types of live streaming content and is apparently really different than my MySpace page.
Yeah. I don't know MySpace or Twitch, so I'll just agree that they're different.
Yeah, okay.
All right, so Dr. K started streaming his interviews with prominent gamers, on his Twitch account, and the conversations would kind of focus on mental health struggles and would sometimes last for hours.
Wow, okay, interesting. How did this Health Gamer, streaming service make money?
Yeah, I mean, the viewers would make donations, and then they could subscribe to Healthy Gamer, and so that was the economic engine.
Okay, creative way to leverage Dr. K's passion for mental health and gaming addiction. I'm not seeing the compliance dilemma yet.
Okay, let's introduce the second important person for today's story.
Okay.
The gamer in the story, and he's referred in the story, is known as Wreckful. And he is apparently a legend in the gaming community. Dr. K had even idolized Wreckful back in his gaming days.
I wonder if Wreckful was really good at Pong like me. Okay, so the good doctor knows of Wreckful.
Yeah, I don't think anyone playing Pong is doing live streaming on Twitch.
Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe on their live streaming on their MySpace page.
Yeah. So Wreckful had agreed to do a live streamed conversation about Wreckful's mental health journey.
Mm-hmm.
Wreckful was so famous in the gaming world that this would put Healthy Gamer on the map.
Nice. Well, was this supposed to be like a live therapy session?
Yeah, I mean, this gets back to when you made an ass of yourself earlier. It's an important question.
Can we just cut that, Kennedy? I mean, thank you.
Yeah, I'm just going to keep bringing it up whenever I have a chance. Yeah, I mean, this idea of a live therapy session is your question. It's important because there was major boundaries set at the beginning, and importantly, Dr. K was positioning this not as a therapy session. Mm-hmm. Not a treatment, but a conversation.
Okay.
And so Dr. K even noted to Wreckful that he could not treat Wreckful's depression over the internet.
All right. Okay. So what happened?
Well, the initial live stream was almost 2 hours and was apparently according to this article, captivating. Wreckful shared about his older brother's death by suicide. Even opened up about his own suicide attempt. I mean, it got very raw and very real.
Yeah, sounds kind of dark, but this is definitely sounding like they might be blurring some lines here.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, it was also clear that Dr. K and Wreckful bonded, and they really liked each other.
Okay,
that really kind of probably drew the audience in even more.
Mm-hmm.
But it also, going back to your blurred lines, I mean, it started getting personal and deep, so to the point that Dr. K said, hopefully I don't get sued because I'm not really delivering medical care. That's a quote from the article of Dr. K.
Okay.
Well, Wreckful's response was, I'll try not to kill myself anytime soon for you. So it came across supposedly kind of as a banter.
Okay, they're kind of having fun with it.
Yeah.
But some reason my spidey sense is a little bit going crazy right now.
Yeah. That's wise, Brad. So after the first episode, I guess because it got so raw and real, Dr. K put up some professional boundaries, and he had Reckful sign some consents before they did any other interviews, and he just really wanted the paperwork to be clear that they did not have a physician-patient relationship and that these were only conversations.
Right. So it sounds like Dr. K was attempting to take steps towards compliance with these waivers.
Yes. They ended up doing 5 more conversations with live audiences. And I mean, when I say he's famous, Brad, the live audiences were in the hundreds of thousands.
Jeez.
Yeah. And so the conversations tragically ended because Reckful died by suicide at 31 years of age.
Woo! Wow, that took a tragic turn. It had such a sad ending to a story that sounded like it was helping a ton of people.
I know. It's crazy. I mean, and apparently when Dr. K did his next Healthy Gamer episode, he openly wept on the show as he talked about Reckful's death for the first time. And it was clear, that Dr. K was trying to help and that he was making an impact on the gaming community.
Mm-hmm. Well, how so, though?
Yeah. Well, I guess throughout this, 5-episode-ish journey, viewers started commenting that they were inspired by all of this to seek out mental health treatment. And then a really cool thing started happening in the gaming world is they would put badges on their online profiles, and they had, some certain badge that would indicate that they were open to talking with other gamers about mental health.
Well, that was interesting, and clearly Dr. K's heart was in the right place.
For sure. He did have some critics. I mean, other professionals were, kind of criticizing this platform of, live streaming these, quote, conversations. And from what it sounds like, the sessions, as it evolved, started becoming so intense that some of the critics would kind of describe it as voyeuristic, like you were watching something you felt like you shouldn't be a part of, as it got deeper and deeper into it.
Yeah, but, for starters, you said that they had a really good relationship, and these kind of conversations that really come from the heart can be very engaging.
Yeah, for sure. And then, for a little bit of a twist, there was actually an added compliance layer that came out to this terrible story.
Okay, what happened?
So 2 years after the incident, a newcomer to the streaming world heard about this Dr. K. Reckful story, and he decided to file a complaint to the medical board against Dr. K. Now, the newcomer grew up in a family of psychologists and was taught a strict view of psychotherapy.
Yeah, and for those listening might be wondering, well, how could this person file a complaint? And as we've talked about in many other episodes, complaints typically come either from someone who's angry, right? Angry patient, angry employee or former employee, angry competitors. However, anyone can file a complaint, and then the board has the discretion to handle that investigation.
Yeah, and unfortunately, as it turns out, the person who filed the complaint was also himself a content creator on Twitch, and he admitted that he had filed the complaint to draw attention to his own audience.
Wow, this story just took another turn.
I know. Well, let's go to break and talk about some lessons to be learned and find out what happened to Dr. K.
Many business owners use legal counsel as a last resort rather than as a proactive tool that can further their success. Why? For most, it's the fear of unknown legal costs. ByrdAdatto's Access Plus program makes it possible for you to get the ongoing legal assistance you need for one predictable monthly fee. That gives you unlimited phone and email access to the legal team, so you can receive feedback on legal concerns as they arise. Access Plus, a smarter, simpler way to access legal services. Find out more. Visit ByrdAdatto.com today.
Welcome back to Legal 123 to the ByrdAdatto. I'm your host, ByrdAdatto, with my co-host, Michael Byrd. And Michael, this season, our theme is compliance fundamentals. And today, we're talking about a really sad story that you were giving us that came from the news. And although this was not our client, but our client did share it with us, but it's a story about just the lessons learning between what you have to think about between the physician and the patient relationship.
Yeah, so we're kind of tracking a New York Times article that happened on the East Coast, and we have the psychiatrist, Dr. K, and a gamer, Reckful, and Dr. K, who had this kind of deep history and passion for the gaming world and helping the gaming world because he himself was, had a gaming problem that he overcame. He created this platform called Healthy Gamer and did live streams with Reckful, and he, to be fair to Dr. K, number one, clearly his heart was in the right place. He was trying to make a difference, and number two, he did a lot of things to try to set the boundaries appropriately on the nature of the relationship, and the pressure came in the once Reckful was not doing well. He died by suicide several months after all this started, and so it was a tragic story in of itself. And then fast forward a couple years later, and an opportunistic live streamer decided to report Dr. K to the medical board to kind of gain attention to himself. And as we left off, anyone can report someone to the medical board. So, we kind of have Dr. K having a medical board investigation looking at this whole scenario of, his doing these, quote, interviews or conversations with someone over live stream.
Right. And key to that complaint, it was coming from someone who was a competitor, so was using it as an advantage as this particular person tried to build up their particular platform. So, but let's go back and talk about that physician-patient relationship.
Yeah, that's the key to the whole thing. So first, why don't you go first, Brad, and talk about the general principles that go with establishing the physician-patient relationship, and then I can add some flavor with some kind of special applications that particularly apply in the psychiatry world.
Okay, yeah, and I think for many people, they assume that the doctor-patient relationship typically begins when a doctor agrees to diagnose or treat that patient. This agreement can be formed or implied, such as when a patient schedules an appointment or when the doctor offers medical advice or even informally offers advice.
Brad, what did we say about you being an ass? I mean, I'm sorry, about you making assumptions?
We said we shouldn't do that.
Oh, okay.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And in many legal contexts, whether someone is referred to as the quote-unquote patient formally or is less significant to the doctor's actions, so really what they're looking at is what are the doctor's action in terms of providing that care advice. For example, if the doctor provides an evaluation and treatment or a follow-up without expressly declining to take on the patient, the relationship is presumed to have started. Now, Michael, what are some of the compliance steps a physician should consider or make sure they do to figure out if their physician-patient relationship has been established?
Yeah, it all starts with having clear communication on the scope and limits of care that are being provided, and then having documenting the conversations and decisions accurately and comprehensively. And, of course, using written consent forms when beginning treatment or taking on a new patient.
Yeah, and they should also note if there is a refusal to provide treatment for any reasons, for any decisions, that should be noted. But once you start treating, the refusal kind of is irrelevant. You've already started the treatment. And are there any special rules for psychiatrists?
Yeah, and here's the twist. So as we've said, Dr. K was really trying to position this as a conversation and getting the agreement from Reckful that this is not treatment. Right. That I'm not beginning treatment. We're only having a conversation. It wouldn't be a doctor-physician relationship. And there's this kind of psychiatry world ethical concern that dates back many years about publicly talking about individuals who are not patients. And so think about the pressure point here. Dr. K's positioning this for Reckful not to be a patient because he didn't want to be, doing all this online. Yet there's this other thing that he can't be talking about someone publicly who's not a patient, and so there's a kind of a risk no matter which way you cut it.
Yeah, it's difficult because obviously I'm sitting here thinking as an audience member hearing this story, it would appear that he did certain things, and but because of those additional requirements based on his scope of practice, it's a little bit harder to do this, in a live stream with a person who is or is not your patient. And I think for our audience member, maybe we can jump to this part. What ended up happening to Dr. K?
So it was interesting. First of all, it was a 2-year investigation.
Ooh.
So, I mean, it's hard to paint the pain for our physicians out in the audience that haven't gone through this before, of the time, the money, the emotional toil of having something like this hang over your head for 2 years. But at the end of it, he received a public reprimand, which, as you and I know, is of no real consequence to his license.
Right.
It's basically a hand slap. I think the article didn't talk about this, so you and I would be speculating a little bit, but I think that the fact that he had consents from Reckful and that he went to such great lengths to create the boundaries on the relationship ended up mitigating, this finding that there was unprofessional conduct, or not the finding, but mitigating the consequences to the public reprimand.
Yeah, and it sounds like what Dr. K did was he really did attempt to take all the things that you'd want to see somebody think through the process and making sure that this individual understood whether or not there was or was not a relationship, and that he truly wasn't treating him by having these consents.
Yeah. Now, I was going to add something there too, because I think about the actions he took, and they're pretty in line with how we walk our clients through it.
Yeah.
But it illustrates the risk, right? Like, you are going to do something that's risky, and it may draw public attention because it's so out there, and so the risk came back in the sense of costing him 2 years and a lot of concern, but the steps he did ended up really minimizing the impact.
Yeah, and this is a perfect example that, as physicians and other medical providers utilize social media outlets to really enhance their business and obviously personal reputation, they can't forget that relationship between the patient and the physician is really based on a trust level, which gives rise to the physician's ethical responsibilities, kind of like you were talking about, and make sure they're placing the patient's welfare above the physician's own self-interest. And again, in this particular case, keep going back to, there was a lot of communications that I'm not treating you. And it sounded like, and if I remember in the article, even his family didn't feel like that Dr. K did anything wrong.
Right.
But it wasn't like they felt like he was treating him. But now we're getting close to the end. Michael, what are some final thoughts?
Yeah, medical board rules that regulate the physician-patient relationship were not built with social media in mind.
Yeah.
Even with good intentions like Dr. K, compliance becomes a risk when you start kind of presenting doctor-patient content in any form of media. But live media creates an even higher risk because at least when you have recorded content, there's that moment in time where you can say, you know what, that may have gotten a little bit too real, and we may have to not publish it or re-record some of it. When you're live, it's just there, and that's what happened here. And so, this is an unfortunate reality for kind of these modern progressive physicians with good intentions to really make change. They have to understand that that they're taking a compliance risk even when they do it right, and they really need to lean into it every step of the journey so that it's not just a one-time, here's your consent forms, but you're really walking through it the entire time.
Well, good, and that's probably audience members why we don't do anything live for our podcast, so that we can re-record stuff. And Kennedy, and cut that. No, just kidding. Next Wednesday, Michael, we are back. We're bringing back series regular and our partner, Jay Riero, when he joins us to highlight the compliance fundamentals of properly billing and coding in a medical practice. Thanks again for joining us today. And remember, if you like this episode, please subscribe, make sure to give us a 5-star rating, and share with your friends.
You can also sign up for the ByrdAdatto newsletter by going to our website at ByrdAdatto.com.
ByrdAdatto is providing this podcast as a public service. This podcast is for educational purposes only. This podcast does not constitute legal advice, nor does it establish an attorney-client relationship. Reference to any specific product or entity does not constitute an endorsement or recommendation by ByrdAdatto. The views expressed by guests are their own, and their appearance on the program does not imply an endorsement of them or any entity they represent. Please consult with an attorney on your legal issues.